what does a good product manager need to have to be really successful, right? Any guesses? Come on. You said you're a good product manager. What do you think one thing you need to be really good product manager?
Market awareness.
Market awareness?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Consumer understanding.
Consumer understanding?
Empathy.
Yeah?
Empathy.
Empathy?
Communication.
Vision.
Vision? Look, these are all fancy buzzwords. Right? Right. I think this is really true. Everything I have done, any product I have worked with, I think many times you can look into data, you can look into users, the customers, the empathy, the vision and all, ultimately it all boils down to a common sense. And, just like before you guys came in, we were just talking about a situation that I was recently dealing with a product manager out of a very well-known company. And she just said, oh, but that's common sense. That's how you need to do. I said, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about tonight. So why common sense? Why this is the most important thing? A role of product manager is for you to manage a product or a service. A service could be productized. And by managing that product means you're making the right decisions to make that product successful, right? What does success mean? Success means, in a most brutal sense, that your product is being loved by the customers or the users it's intended for, and is funded by the business. You need to make some money out of it, right? This is common sense. Any business, doesn't matter whether it's charity or government, you need to have a positive business case. That's common sense. It needs to be, the users need to love it, right? That's common sense. If a user doesn't like the product, they're not going to use it. They're not going to buy your products. So again, this is a fundamental premise of running a successful product. And behind all this, you need to make the right decisions about the engineering, how you make that product, right? Again, you don't need to be really technical to understand all that. All you need to know, you can have, top class engineers, ask them the question, they can come up with whatever answers they like. But ultimately, it's a common sense that drives those decisions with your engineering team. So they come up with two complementary technologies, both are really good, they cost similar amount, but the one you choose to work with depends on the product that you are building. And again, it depends on that particular moment. It may not be the best one, it may not be the right one in a few years' time, but at that given moment, it could be the best one. And that decision you're making based on all the inputs you are getting and making your judgment based on the available information, right? Sometimes a domain experience does help. So let's say you're working in a financial services and, based on how the industry works, based on all the compliance and regulations required, if you already have that understanding, then it's easier to make those decisions, right? It helps you to come to those decisions quickly, right? But that doesn't matter. Even if you don't have a domain experience, it doesn't matter. You can acquire that knowledge quickly. You can get that information from other people who are domain experts. As a product manager, you don't need to be like, master of one domain or master of one technology or master of one consumer segment. You need to be jack of all trades. You're wearing multiple hats, performing multiple roles at any given moment of time, right? Today, you could be an engineering manager. Tomorrow, you could be a data guy looking into analytics. Day after, you could be a user researcher working with your UX team to figuring out, how best to design a particular interface or a feature, and all that. So again, it doesn't really matter whether you have domain knowledge or not. It doesn't really matter, you are good at one thing or not, right? What matters is you need to be flexible, to perform all these different roles. That's number one. And number two, once you're performing all these roles, you just need to ask the right questions and make sure that you're making the right decisions, right? And there's nothing right or wrong. It all depends. It all depends on that moment of time, right? and the information available to you, right? Otherwise, if there is a rule book, or if there is a recipe to make a successful product, then every product would have been successful, right? You have seen Facebook launching a lot of new products. Not all products work. You have seen Google launching a lot of high-profile, multi-million dollars products. A lot of them doesn't really come to the market, or even when they come to market, they end up killing that because it doesn't work. Similarly, Apple, they launch a lot of products. Not every products work, So doesn't matter which company you are, doesn't matter how much money you spend, and doesn't matter how good you are from engineering or business point of view, there's no recipe to success, right? So that's pretty much what I think about product management. In the course, that's I'll be doing. So I'll be doing the product management course. I've done it last year, 10 people. This time I think there are roughly about the same number of people, right? Everyone was from different background. Some were product owners, some were technical, some were not technical, some were more fresh from the universities. And the reason I do this course is because I want to hire a good product manager, right? So in my company, I hire product managers regularly. And instead of hiring randomly, I like to see what they do, what they're capable of. I don't go for experience, I go for, common sense. So this course gives me an opportunity to work with them, to interact with them. So the last cohort, out of everyone, I really wanted to hire one of the girl who was in the cohort, but she ended up getting a really good job. Yeah, so I missed out. But really, I really wanted to hire her. She was really smart. Another girl, I think another guy, again, ended up working for a bank. He was doing like a pseudo product management role, but after doing the course, he ended up doing a proper product management role. Another girl, fresh from the uni, she ended up working for a big consulting company as a product person. And I think there was one guy who joined the startup to be their product manager. He wasn't from the product background, but that's what he ended up doing. So yeah, I think I'm glad that most of them ended up doing some sort of product role, and I hope it would have been helpful to them, right? So that's the reason why I do it, right? And hopefully this time, when I'm leading the coach, I'll be able to hire one for my company as well. So right, I'll just leave the floor open. Any questions, anything you want to ask about product management, about startup, about commercial models, anything. Yeah.
What are the salaries for product management?
Okay. A good question, right? So,
what do you offer?
So, product managers, if you look online on various job boards, then product management roles, I think they're widely miscategorized, or they are badly specified, right? Currently, on Indeed or LinkedIn, you will see all sorts of product management jobs. You will see product management top where you don't even have a product to manage. Again, it depends on which industry and which domain you are looking into. A true product management role is something where you really have a product to manage, a proper product to manage, and you are the sole in charge of making all the decisions for that product. That's it's. I think you will end up doing that role in a startup environment where you really own up that product from the beginning. But for bigger companies, it's very unlikely for one person to own up an entire product, for various reasons. Of course, as a company, you don't want to be dependent on one person. What happens if he's dead? So most companies, what they do, they end up splitting the product management roles into multiple parts. So sometimes you have marketing manager, which collects a lot of data from the market and pass on that information to the product team, right? So the marketing part is managed by someone else. Sometimes you have engineering manager, they basically manage the, as the name says, engineering side, right? Okay, what kind of skills to have, what kind of team to build, what kind of technologies to use on a product, and make those decisions, right? Then you have product managers who kind of work with these two guys and then make the decisions about the product and prioritize a product backlog, right? So effectively they manage a product roadmap, right? Then you have product owners who are working closely with product managers but looking more inwards towards the team. And again, depending on the complexity, you also may have a business analyst who is then working closely with the product owner to feed a low-level technical details to your team, right? So eventually, the role is quite big. In a smaller company, you may be doing all these roles together. In a bigger companies, you may be doing one or the other. So depending on what you are doing, we'll see different kind of job specs, right? The job specs, I think the salaries, they range, I've seen anywhere from 30K to begin with, to all the way, I think, about 120 for a lead product manager. The higher up you go into the product management role is more about people management, not so much about product management. But you are normally running a team of product managers effectively. And most likely you will have a title of product director or a VP of product, something like that. And you will be in charge of a portfolio of a product being run by different product managers, right? And you will own up the profit and loss of those products, in some cases. I think in a startup world, a CEO or the founder normally does the overall product management end to end. So if you really want to have end-to-end product management experience, then either be a founder of a company or become a co-founder of a company. That way you will get truly a first-hand experience of what it takes to be a successful product manager, right? And you will be able to measure your success firsthand. Either you are successful or not. Your startup. Bigger companies, it doesn't really depend on a person. You may be really successful with your product, but the company may be a disaster, right? It could be the other way around. The company is really successful, but your product is a disaster. So it could be either way around. So again, depending on the job spec, depending on experience, depending on the domain, the salary range anywhere from about 30 to about 120 of a product manager. I think UK has got the wrong end for the product managers. I think this is my opinion. So if you go to US, Silicon Valley, then the product managers are very highly paid. I think anywhere from 150K or more, right? But in the UK, they are relatively lesser paid, whereas the Scrum Masters are paid more than the product managers. But in practice, the success of the product depends a lot more on the product managers than on Scrum Masters. So I find UK are slightly biased here against the product managers. Yeah. Yes.
Do you see any value in MBAs to transition to a product role?
Good question. So when I did my MBA, when did I did? Almost 9 years ago now. So in the first week of your induction, everyone gets to know who their classmates are, and I put my name and product manager. Everyone in my class asked me, "What is a product manager?" Right at the time, and that also shows that 10 years ago, this role was just pretty much not really defined, at least in the UK. In the US, maybe it got definition in early 2000s, I think. But in the UK, even late to 2000 was not really defined, and most people didn't really knew. I think MBA helps in some ways, but it's counterintuitive in some other ways. Believe me, right? So one rule I have in my company, I don't hire MBAs. Right. No, that's true. I never hire MBAs in my company, because there's a reason. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about just before the session started. The MBA program teaches you all the tools and methodologies mainly to run bigger companies and bigger teams and bigger projects, right? Whereas product management, it's supposed to be smaller. You can't be a product leader managing 50 product managers under you. I've never seen this kind of org. where you are like, okay, I'm a product manager or product owner, I own up this whole suite of product, and I've got 50 product managers under me. I've never seen that, right? So what I have seen mainly is either a product manager is really managing a smaller product with working directly with the engineering team and the marketing team, or you have like a head of product or a product director with about 5 to max 15 or 20 in an extreme scenario, product managers or product owners working underneath. So when you think about that, it's a really small setup, right? So a lot of MBAs, your 2x2 metrics and all this whatever Potter forces and all, it doesn't really help. By the way, from strategic point of view, Potter himself was bankrupt, not bankrupt, but his company ended up winding up. So you need to think from the other way, that okay, when you are doing an MBA, the guru you learn from is Potter, Michael Potter, right? The 5 forces. But his company itself ended up going bust, right? So the product he was selling was not fit for the market. So he was a terrible product manager, right? So and that says a lot about MBA and the product management. So I think it helps, but only to a very smaller degree. Not to, where it helps is, for you to understand all the other things like marketing to a degree, accounting to a degree, economics and all those things, but not in making the decisions as a product manager. Yeah? Yeah?
If you don't hire people with MBA, is there any other qualifications or master's programs or something?
Oh, sorry, where did my slide go? That's the only thing I look for. Sorry.
Just say common sense.
Yes, yes. No, it's really important to me. And you won't believe me, every month I do, about 30, 40 interviews every month. I do it. So I have a 70 people team in India, right? And we hire a lot in India as well. And about 30, 40 interviews every month. I hire 1 out of 1,000. And I see a lot of people. Some of them are really smart. Maybe really good at what they are doing. But I'm really biased. I'm really biased about having a common sense. So whether they have a really good MBA or not, doesn't matter. Whether they have 10 years. So one rule I have in my company, doesn't matter how long your experience is. I have defined all the job roles or levels based on your capabilities. So I can have a 10-year experienced guy working at a junior level if he doesn't really have any capability, versus a 2-year experienced guy working in a senior role if he's really smart and capable, right? So it's something that I'm experimenting right now in my company. Yeah.
So specifically for digital products, do you see any role change role change of product manager in big legacy firms as compared to the startups?
Yes, a lot. So we're talking digital products, right? Yeah. So within digital, in a startup world, what you will see, at least in the early days, that you are free to experiment a lot. You want to test a feature out, you can easily do A/B testing, even if the feature goes wrong, it doesn't matter, because you don't have a lot of PR or reputation risk, and you can always apologize. But if you're working for a bigger company, or let's say about 50-year-old company, which I have done in past, doesn't matter how innovative they are, doesn't matter how agile they want to be, they cannot take brand risk, right? So let's say, I think everyone heard about the mess up with Lloyd's account. Does everyone remember last month? The Lloyd's, they rolled out like a new banking app, and it ended up backfiring or something, and the CEO got fired. The poor guy didn't even know what happened. But I think that says a lot. You can't just experiment. You can't just take chances with bigger companies or bigger. And again, it's a financial company, it's people's money. We understand all that, right? But imagine the same situation with a smaller startup. No one would have really cared. And as a product manager, you would have been able to experiment a lot more. Compared to this kind of setup. So hence, I think you will see a trend recently in the market. A lot of big companies, they realize they cannot experiment too much. So they end up setting up a different innovation department or a digital department for the team to experiment in a separate environment. So pretty much all the banks now, HSBC, Digital, Barclays, NatWest, Lloyds, they all have a separate digital unit. They experiment, they come up with different concepts, they figure out what to do, and they take those concepts in-house only when they know it's going to work 100% foolproof. So they cannot experiment or take any risk in the corporate environment. Yeah, this you will see a lot nowadays. Pretty much every company, every bigger companies are doing it. So that could be an option as a product manager. That could be an option that you actually join if you want to be more experimental, then you can join this kind of innovation units or digital units than the parent company. Yeah.
Do you think is product management something learnable without on-the-job training?
Yes.
How except product school?
Let me take an example, right? I think the best product manager is your mom. Believe me, your mom is your best product manager you would have ever come across. You know why? Let's say she cooks, right? She cooks, she knows what everyone likes, right? And she cooks accordingly. In a family, most of the family wouldn't have unlimited income, so they are limited with the budgets. So she knows what to buy using that money. So making those best decisions that, okay, you know what, I can't really buy ridiculous stuff. I need to be really careful with the money. She knows how to minimize the cost of making the meal for everyone. She knows how to make the best meal for the kids or for the family, right? And she needs to do it really efficiently. She can't spend the entire day in making a nice meal, on a day-to-day basis. So every day she'll be spending like really, shorten the time, really learn fast. Okay, she wants to make a new dish, she'll experiment. If you guys like it, she'll do it better next time, right? If you don't like it, then again, she'll try to change it, right? So every day in out, she's experimenting, right? She's making sure that her users or customers, is the family, and really making sure that they're happy with whatever she's doing, right? So for me, she's like the best product manager, continuously experimenting, continuously learning, right? And making the best decisions.
So in terms of business, how can someone learn product management?
That is what product management is. That is really what product management is. You're continuously learning. You're experimenting, you're taking a chance based on the response or the feedback you are getting, you're making the next move, right? Yes?
What would you say the difference is between a product owner and a product manager?
Again, depends on the company, okay? But in most typical setting, I think product owner, again, is a role that is widely confused with product managers and the vice versa. In the true agile sense, the definition of product owner is of someone who owns the product, owns the product meaning is in charge of making all the decisions about that product and also the profit and loss, the P&L responsibilities. In practical world, again, this normally is not done by one person unless it's a startup. In a practical world, you have a Scrum product owner or an agile business analyst, which is like really like taking a requirement from a product manager and breaking it down into user stories to be done by the team, right? At the same time, you have product managers who are mainly looking more towards the market and managing the product roadmap. That, okay, this is a market opportunity which is coming out. I need a feature like this to capitalize on this opportunity. He passed on that feature to the product owner saying, okay, this is a feature I need. When can you give it to me? Product owner says maybe in 2 weeks time or 2 months time, and accordingly he plans his backlog, right? Sorry, that's my real-time chat. Anyways, so that's the main split you will see. But in some companies, you will also see CPO, Chief Product Officer, or a Chief Product Owner as a very senior role in the company, who eventually will have like a product responsibility overall.
So So the chief product owners sit above the product manager, though?
In some companies,
Yeah.
yeah. Many times, actually, just on the same note, you will see like a CTO being the like CPO. So the product manager reports to CTOs in some companies. I think that's completely wrong.
Yeah, you have too many people in the chain making a decision.
Yeah.
Just miss
Yeah.
the issue. I think.
And again, I don't think product managers should report to CTOs unless you're working on a technical product. Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, I don't know if you can describe a day-to-day, a normal day for a product manager. What do you do in office when
Yeah.
he comes out?
As I said, product manager, there is no normal day. Every day you are playing a different role, right? But in a nutshell, you're getting a feedback from the market on a daily basis that, okay, because it's digital, right? You get real-time feedback. So, okay, how is my product doing today in the market? You know, what is the competition doing? You know, where is the opportunity? You know, have I capitalized on the opportunity available to me? If yes, good, I can look for another one. If no, what can I do to capitalize the opportunity? So you brainstorm, you come up with ideas. You don't know which ideas are going to work, so you design some experiments, right, to test them out. Once you experiment, you try to collect some data, some kind of confidence in whether this idea is working or not. Based on that, you then come up with a business case, whether, you know, what is a return on investment on a particular product or a feature, and then you're making, you know, decision whether to invest into that feature or not. Once you decide, yes, I want to do this feature, then you again go back to your engineering team and, you know, figure out how to do it. What is the cost? What is the timeline? Based on that, you plan your go-to-market strategy, you know, communication strategies, right? Once the feature is built, you launch it, right? And once you launch it, you start getting the feedback again. This you are doing continuously every day, right? Someday you are doing one of more, you know, less of other, and vice versa.
And do you need technical knowledge, like
No.
coding? Or?
No. It helps if you do, but you don't really.
So is it like management, basically business management?
I would say,
Project management?
product managers, if you take the true definition, they're more like a mini CEOs, right? So CEOs are responsible to run a business and make every decisions about that business. Product managers are responsible to run a product and make all the decisions about those products, right? So I think it's a mini CEO role, you know. Yeah.
Other than the engineering team, what other stakeholders internally do you work closely with?
So again, depends on the kind of business, but pretty much every department that a business has. In my working life, which is still is my current life, I have worked with support, you know, customer support, both online and offline, call centers. I work with lawyers, both legal and policies. If you don't understand the difference, then legal is like your terms and conditions. Policies is how to use the product and where does the liabilities lies for a company. So you need to define this. As a product manager, you are in charge, right? So legal, then go to market, definitely. When you say go to market or marketing team in general, you're working with content, social media, analytics, you know, Google, SEO, everyone. You're working with your fraud department. So I work with fraud as well. I worked with data scientists to create some models, financial models and stuff like that. UX, of course. You know, I think you work very closely with UX, very, very closely. Within UX, you work closely with user research, as well as the user experience designer, as well as the visual designer, the UI designer, right? Again, marketing, you work very closely, which also has branding within that. Operations, so anyone in charge of setting up support operations or just back-end operations, you know, anything like that. In the music business, I worked with the music transcoding team as well, how you transcode the music. And the company I was working was for Nokia at the time. So I was working on a music player, which also goes onto the mobile phones. So also the team which makes the boxes for the mobile phone and the CDs that goes in that box, because the software goes onto that CD, right? So again, it really depends on the company. But in a nutshell, every team in your company, ideally.
How do you acquire local domain knowledge if you don't know that sector?
One thing I can tell you, a lot of these sectors, okay, there are different sectors, but I think there is a big overlap in the stuff you do, regardless of the product you're working on and the sectors you're working in. There's a big overlap, especially in terms of digital products, right? So let's say you're creating a mobile app for financial service or a payment company, right? Versus you are creating a website for your GP. There's a common that you still need to collect user data and protect it, right? So that's a common element. Again, there are so many things like this across the industries that are just common. What does help is the complicated regulations across the industry, right? And unless you are really, really dealing with that, you don't really need the domain knowledge. And many times, the innovations in an industry comes from parallel industries. Something happening in one industry is really good. The product manager working in that industry coming to another industry and able to transfer the skills will be a lot more innovative.
We've had some people ask as well in terms of data,
Yeah.
discussing this before the session started, which is when you're in a lot of these courses or a lot of companies, or a lot of examples that people get are, you have all this data in this wonderful world of Google and this wonderful world of Facebook.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, the data's there, but what happens when you're starting from scratch? How do you get the data? Or even a medium-sized company, so it would be good to get your experience.
So, great question, and this is something that I really, really try to advocate. And that's the reason why I don't really hire a lot of MBAs. They need a lot of data. So, see, when you're launching a product from scratch, or when you're working for a startup, you don't have a lot of data to begin with. You don't have a lot of money or resources available to you to actually go with that, right? So, when you're in this situation, right, you need to be really, really, really smart in what you're doing, and really. I can't really describe it, but you need to be really detailed, really observant on what's happening, really understand the user that you're trying to target, and come up with a solution where you are going with a gut feeling, saying, okay, you know what, this is it, this is right, I don't need data to prove me wrong or right, So give you an example, right? Everyone uses some form of sign up on any website or mobile app, right? So you normally have your username, fill in the username, fill in the password, and then click sign in, right? If you remember, about 10 years ago, everyone used to have username, create password, so set your password, confirm password, 2 password fields. Remember everyone? You used to have that. But if you see all the new apps, you only have 1 field. You don't have 2 fields. Have you guys seen this? Noticed that? So about 10 years ago, I did an experiment for a company I was working on, and we found that if you have, especially on mobile, not on the website, on the mobile, if you have a single password field, it's a lot more easier for people to complete the sign up, as well as for people to remember the password, compared to having 2 separate fields. Now we did an experiment, we collected a lot of data and proved it with the data, right? But for me, it's a common sense, Why do you need to confirm the password? A lot of people forget it anyways. You put in all these complicated rules, people don't remember. You need to make the application secure, but there are other ways to do that rather than having a crazy password, right? Most people, they're easy. They're not like a crazy engineers. They don't need to have complex rules, right? And again, with the whole nowadays with Face ID and the fingerprint, it's a lot more easier. You don't even need a password to log in. Like WhatsApp, you don't need a password. You install the app, you put your mobile number, you get a text message, and they verify. Right? As simple as that, right? So this is what I think you can work on. So when you are designing, so WhatsApp is really smart in that case, whenever they started, they figured this out in the beginning, right? Okay, you know what, you can't really have this crazy password. We need to have a username. No, you don't need a username. Why? Because you need to identify a user. How do you identify a user? Oh, from the mobile number, because they are running the app on the mobile, but I need a username. No, you don't. You really don't, Let's do an A/B test, right? Yes, you can do A/B test when you have a lot of users. But right now, we don't have that many, those users. Let's just go with one decision. Maybe we are wrong. Doesn't matter. Let's put it out. When we have enough time, enough data, enough money, maybe we can revisit it. But right now, I just need to drive a decision further. You can't spend days of your engineering team thinking about, okay, whether this feature is right or that is right. Make a decision. Doesn't matter is right or wrong. Implement it, move on, come back to it later.